Once again, Magic the Gathering has experienced yet another leak, this time for Double Masters 2.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well, because we have gathered to take a glimpse into the future. Wizards of the Coast has messed up, and a bunch of Double Masters 2 cards have been leaked through Baldur's Gate. Essentially what happened is somebody opened up some Baldur's Gate product, and instead of getting Baldur's Gate cards, they got Double Masters cards. So we're going to take a look at almost a dozen spoilers, but speaking of screw-ups, I thought you might get a kick out of this. Up on the screen, you're going to see the most ridiculous pre-release kit I have ever encountered. One of my viewers submitted this on the Discord, showing the pre-release kit they got last night. Now, all that was inside the kit was 2 promos, which at first might be exciting, until you realize that literally there are no booster packs, and all of the booster packs have been replaced by a bunch of dividers. So it's like, here's 2 promos and a bunch of dividers to keep them very separate. I just found this kit to be absurdly amusing. That out of the way, let's dive into the Double Masters 2 spoiler cards.
All right, here we have our big fat leak image. We're going to kind of be jumping around based on the nature of what's here. So we're going to start out in the upper left-hand corner with Muldrifter. I'm just going to use a big fat red circle to denote where we are on this image. Now, Muldrifter is 1 blue and 4 for a 2/2 flying elemental creature. When it comes into play, you draw 2 cards, and it evokes for a blue and 2. This is a card we've seen reprinted a number of times. They've taken the concept that we saw originally in Lorwyn and basically just given it to us from a different perspective and angle, right? Where you've got the same concept of a flying fish elemental that is kind of being unmade as its tail turns into these crazy little beautiful butterflies. Imagine this thing just flying by. It's genuinely amazing. The idea of these elemental concepts from Lorwyn are really enjoyable to me overall. So this is a solid include, right? Now beside that, we have Eternal Witness, an absolutely incredible green card. 2 green and 1 for a 2/1 that says, when Eternal Witness enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. This is so solid, right? You can flicker this thing back and forth, just even if you're not doing tricks with it. Just a straight up body for this cost that gives you a card back from your graveyard feels great. I have always loved Eternal Witness, and they've given it different kind of concepts over the years where the idea is, oh, she knows everything that every elf has ever known. She's witnessed it to a degree through a magical link through all of the elves, which is really cool. Now, I have to admit, because of the nature of this image, you can't really see the artwork on these cards that well. And the artwork on this Eternal Witness, I really do want to see more close up, because from further away, it just looks to me like this lady's arms are just jutting right out of her rack. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's just something about the way the artwork looks that is absolutely hilarious to me. But this is a great card. The next thing we're going to talk about is Azorius Chancery, okay? This is part of a cycle. There is one for all 10 different color combinations in Magic. These are lands that enter the battlefield tapped. When they enter the battlefield, you return a land you control to its owner's hand. So the idea is that it taps for 2 mana. So for this one, it taps for a white and blue, but that it kind of sets you back a land. But ultimately, there are ways to take advantage of this, right? So these bounce lands have become quite useful to people over time. And in fact, I play them in my cube, and I really like the look of some of these and want these versions in particular. Specifically, actually, this is Azorius Chancery. Again, I really wish we could get in there on the artwork, because I think what we're looking at is actually the petrified form of Asperia, the previous leader of the Azorius. If you're not familiar, in really broad strokes, the Azorius were led by this sphinx named Asperia, right? She basically messed with the Golgari back in the day and tangled with Vraska. Vraska ends up working with Nicol Bolas, and she ends up turning Asperia to stone. The statue of Asperia was basically set up in the Azoria Senate for a while until it eventually just ended up falling down into the Undercity where the natural decay processes and whatever busted the stone apart. So as far as I understand, Asperia doesn't even exist in any form anymore. But if this is actually showing Asperia in stone form, that's pretty cool. And even if it's not, just showing Asperia kind of lording over the Azorius actually when she was ruling over them, that's fine too. But I will admit, I genuinely want it to be the stone statue aspect. That's so cool to me. So we have a number of these bounce lands in this little spoiler image. The one right beside it is Celestia Sanctuary, right? So the Azorius are the lawmakers. Celestia are like the hippie commune. We're like, yo, everybody is like connected and we're all good, bro. The artwork is actually pretty solid. It doesn't look too shabby. It doesn't get me excited the same way that the Chancery does because it doesn't feel like it has any kind of other mysteries, but I will admit as well that this image doesn't really let us get too deep in it. So this looks nice, but ultimately doesn't really grab my attention in any other way. Moving on, we've got Boros Garrison in the same cycle, right? This is your red-white land, and the Boros Garrison, they're like the soldiers of Ravnica, the law keepers, and this artwork shows an angel and a bunch of troops running. It's got some energy to it. It's got that Boros feel, so I can appreciate that. Now we're going to leap over to the Gruul Turf, right? And you can see there's actually two of these specifically. It's crazy the amount of cards that got spoiled this way, but there's two copies of Gruul Turf. This artwork feels like the hardest to make out to me. It feels like a busted down temple that is overgrown with vines and stuff like that, and that would fit into the Gruul concept because they are very much about reclamation for nature. They are anti-civilization, anti-big cities, and the world of Ravnica is essentially just one gigantic city. So the Gruul live on the outskirts and the rubble and just kind of reclaim parts of it for the wild, and that is, I'm guessing, what's being transmitted here. You've got the combination of the image not being the highest quality and the camera glare that makes it a little tricky for me to sort out. So again, looking forward to actually seeing these in person. Now we're going to hop down to Simic Growth Chamber. This is your green-blue one, right? And the Simic are your like biomancers. So they like to modify life using different kinds of magic, augment life, change it, create weird sharktopuses, slamming sharks and octopuses together. It's like they work for B movie companies and like, we need new crazy monsters and stuff. It's like, here you go, I just slapped everything together. It's a bear and a goat together. Have fun with it. It's a boat. It's not the best name, but whatever, man. All right, so you know, you've got this kind of concept where they're just these crazy biomancers, and then you look at the artwork, and it looks like you've got all these little, like, sphere domes that will have beings growing inside them. The artwork isn't, like, big enough to really pick it out, but you can see an individual down there. They're most likely inspecting how things are going with the different beings that are being grown. Now, I strongly suspect that's the fifth of the land that we've seen here, and we don't have any of the other 5, but I do fully expect to see all 10, because the first 4 that we saw, the Azorius Chancery, the Celestia Sanctuary, the Boros Garrison, and the Gruul Turf, are all allied colors, okay? But the Simic Growth Chamber is enemy colored. So it doesn't make any sense for them to print 4 allied color and 1 enemy color rather than 5 enemy and 5 allied. You know what I mean? If you're only going to do 5, you do 5 allied or 5 enemy. So we're going to see the entire cycle of 10. I feel comfortable saying that. Now let us continue on with the non-bounce lands, moving over to Flicker Wisp. Flicker Wisp is such a funky card. 2 white and 1 for a 3/1 flyer, and when it comes into play, enters the battlefield, remove another target permanent from the game, return that card to play under its owner's control at end of turn. And I like the flavor text on the original. It's not on this, but the flavor text on the original says, its wings disturb more than air. I find this thing to be horrifying because it has these like like hawk or angel wings that are feathery and inviting, but then it has this crazy insectile body where it's got all these legs like a crazy little centipede or millipede or some other, like a silverfish. You know, it's just got those little insect legs, and it feels like it's just gonna land on you and drive those into you. And that's how it pulls you out of existence, man. Like, it is terrifying. And they set it against like an unpleasant sky. And in this version, oh, you can see there's multiples. Oh, dude, it's a crazy elemental concept. It comes from the same world of Lorwyn that the Muldrifter did. But the Muldrifter feels welcoming and friendly and inviting, whereas this is the complete opposite, man, which is crazy because this is a white card that's meant to protect your permanents. This is a white protective card that is creepy and uncomfortable, which makes it so much more interesting. And I love that both the original and this new version, the new version, it's even grosser because it gives you a more underneath version where you can see all the connections of the legs and the joints and everything. I don't know, man. I find it unpleasant, but that just adds flavor, right? Moving on, we've got Blood Artist. There's going to be a lot of people who are happy that this is included, right? Because this is a highly sought after uncommon to the point where we may as well treat this one like a rare, it feels like. It's 1 black and 1 for a 0/1 vampire. Whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This card is strong enough that Wizards actually felt the need to nerf it in Alchemy on Arena and go, you can't actually target yourself with it because you can do ridiculous shenanigans and silliness. But it's amusing to me that they're just like, you know what, that card's too strong, but over in the world of paper magic, they can't take that away from us. We get the full-on goodness. I do very much enjoy the original art of the Blood Artist. I think it's just really, really well done. The perspective of her looking down, presumably at the individual that she's painting. When you look at the painting that's being painted, and then you read the flavor text that says, great art can never be created without great suffering, you realize that the person in that artwork is probably laying on the ground and may not even have expired yet. They may still be alive, just whimpering and trying to like just cry. You know what I mean? It's just this insane vision where this vampire is just disinterested in like their actual life and is just watching it flow away as they paint with their blood. And you have these cups in the front with the artist tools and everything. Like, I'm sorry, but the original Blood Artist artwork is so incredible. Johannes Voss knocked it so much out of the park that even though this new artwork is interesting, it doesn't evoke the same flavor to me, right? You've got this dude with like, it looks like he's got like something gripped in his mouth, like a quill or something. He's got another quill in his hand. He's got like the skull on his desk, and it looks like he's drawing like an eldritch manual in blood, but it doesn't convey the same level, right? It is somebody who's dabbling in artistry in a dark form, but it's not as intense as the original Blood Artist. I'm sorry. The original Blood Artist was such an amazing, like the entire card is an absolute home run. The design of it is perfect. It does exactly what it's supposed to do overall. Like, I love it. It's so good. Now, let's move on to Wall of Omens. This is a hard one to make out because of the glare. 1 white and 1 gets you a 0/4 wall. I love that like they put Defender on these cards. They didn't used to have to do that because originally back in the day, the creature type wall just had built-in rules baggage that basically gave it Defender. But Wizards decided, you know what, maybe we should just print the abilities on the card and not expect people to know that particular creature types have extra abilities tacked onto them. And that really was the right choice, right? The fewer memory things you have to deal with when playing Magic, the better, because there's a lot of stuff to keep track of. So Wall of Omens is 2 mana for a 0/4 wall with Defender. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So we've seen this actually in green originally. This is a color-shifted Wall of Blossoms, where this was done when they did the whole time-shifting, color-shifting. So they grabbed the Wall of Blossoms and went, it's in white now. The flavor text says, I searched for a vision of Zendikar that doesn't include the Eldrazi. And you can see the Hedrons and everything in the like original artwork. It's pretty sweet. Contrasting it to the newer artwork is somewhat difficult because the newer artwork, I'm not sure where the Wall of Omens is. I don't know if it's supposed to be those blurbles that are on the left-hand side of what looks like a lady who's hefting a spear. I don't know if maybe she's like moving through mists that are supposed to be like omens, and that is what's like, I'm not sure exactly how this particular wall stops people. I can tell how the original one does because it's got ethereal Hedrons, but this one we'll have to wait until we can see the proper artwork. But it is a very solid card, right? Like, these are solid uncommons. Speaking of solid, Bloodbraid Elf. 1 green, 1 red, and 2 for a 3/2 with haste and Cascade. If you're not familiar with Cascade, it says when you cast this spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Put the exiled card on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this card is fantastic in a deck where you're just going for the face, right? Where it's like, boom, not only is she hasty, but she's going to be bringing in an additional spell off the top of your deck, which will also be built for quick aggression. And this is a card, if I'm not mistaken, that has actually seen an increase in prominence due to Pioneer. If you don't know, Pioneer is making big moves in the Magic world right now because of a couple of things. One is the long-term shift of Arena bringing Pioneer on board, but that's not nearly as important as the fact that Pioneer is actually important in paper Magic now. So if you want to be on the Pro Tour, for example, Pioneer is actually a genuinely relevant format. And Pioneer doesn't have the same card pool as other formats like Modern or older formats. So cards that didn't get to shine as strongly in those older formats have a chance to shine much stronger in this environment instead, right? So Bloodbraid Elf is a rising star. Being able to get these versions of it in the double masters is going to be a sweet score. I do want to see this card with the full-on art, like being able to see it properly, because not being able to see it properly right now, her braids look really goofy and unbalanced on top of her head, and she doesn't feel like somebody who's swinging in real hasty. Like, contrast the artwork of the spoiler that we're looking at versus the card that's on the screen with the intensity of this Bloodbraid Elf, who literally looks like she's like leaping down from the treetops or something. Like, it's got that intense, amazing energy, right? And you got somebody who's below with their hands up. No! Like, compare that to what's going on with this one, where it's like, how hasty are you? It's like, well, I wrapped these braids up around my head real quick. I had to, because it looks like I got spikely antlers on my shoulders. Who knows what that's for? So it doesn't give that same tenacious, ferocious energy. I want to see the card full on, though, because I will say I can't see them in their entirety. They're not like fully visible, and they're kind of small too, right? But either way, that wraps up these leaks. I'm going to leave some links to some fun videos for you on the screen. Thanks for coming by. Big shout out to my patrons, and I'll see you next time, my friends.